Route 3. Gietrzwałd, Grazymy, Łęguty, Łęgucki, Młyn, Beaver Refuge. Reserve on the Pasłęk River. Gietrzwałd. Car or bicycle trip, 48 kilometers. The Palace in Grazymy. The knight's estate existed in this place already in the times of the Teutonic Knights. In 1352, the Grand Master Winrich von Knipprode granted the surrounding lands to brothers Jakub and Piotr with the right of inheritance. In the 15th century, Grazymy was owned by the von Grasnis family. From the mid-16th century to 1725 by the von Borke family, and then by von der Gruben. The estate belonged to this last family until the 1820s. Then, as a result of the wedding of Louisa von der Gruben with August von Stein-Kamienski, the palace passed into the hands of his family. The present residence was built in 1924, after the previous one had been destroyed in a fire caused by a lightning strike 2 years earlier. In the manor farm, there was horse, cattle, pig breeding, specialised crops, a mill, 2 sawmills and a distillery. After World War II, the palace was designated as an orphanage for war orphans, and from 1956 into a nursing home for people with mental disabilities, which is still in operation today. The neo-Baroque palace was built in the first half of the 20th century by the then owner of the property, Albrecht von Stein. The residence was built on the site of earlier buildings. The first ones were erected in the 14th century. They were of defensive character. Therefore, it has 18th century walls, stone vaulted cellars and medieval foundations. The main structure is 2-storey, with a usable attic covered with a mansard gable roof. The front and garden elevations were extended by the side avant-corps, with roofs equal to the height of the main part. The floor plan of the buildings resembles the letter H, but not very regular. The avant-corps from the garden side are not of the same length. There are also terraces in individual elevations. Some elements of the old furnishings have been preserved in the interiors of the palace, including stoves made by the master from Malbork, Walter Wendel. In the past, the interiors were richly equipped. There were as many as 12 toilets and 8 bathrooms, as well as central heating. The property is surrounded by a well-kept, landscaped park, in which the entire manor farm from the first half of the 19th century has been preserved. Behind the main structure, there is a historic avenue of limes about 70 metres long, which was entered into the Register of Natural Monuments. There is a small cemetery of the von Stein family on a hill covered with a rare forest, which has all the features of a burial mound. In Grazymy, there is also a boulder recognised in 1964 as a monument of inanimate nature. There are 2 legends associated with it. The first of them says that there is treasure well under the boulder. The second one tells about a lost Prussian castle that has collapsed underground, and the key to it is under the stone. Łęguty, church and cemetery. A medieval village is mentioned in sources from 1352. It was destroyed during the Polish-Teutonic War in 1414. 20 farms were burnt down then. In 1539, Łęguty belonged to Antonius Bork, the councillor and starost of Brandenburg. In 1578, a church was built in the village, and there was a school next to it. In the 16th century, Polish people settled in the village. Therefore, the priest in Łęguty was required to speak in Polish. In 1619, the village belonged to the widow of Acatius Bork. In the years 1737 to 1738, a new evangelical church was built. It is a modest building on a rectangular plan, made of red brick and covered with a gable roof. Despite the looting of equipment, which took place in 1945, among others, Johann Dietrich von Bork's tombstone from 1701 was saved. A unique feature, very rare in other sacred buildings, is the main pulpit altar. The pulpit protrudes from the altar wall and is located above the altar table, and the church pews in the theatre arrangement, the further, the higher. There is also a 19th century manor in the village, and there is a forge, an octagonal pavilion, ruins of a former bakery, and a cowshed from the end of the 19th century in the manor complex. The old cemetery around the church is also very interesting, with characteristic massive cast iron crosses and beautifully forged fences. The old family tombs of von der Groben and von Stein deserve special attention. There is also a bell tower in the cemetery. Currently, the church in Łęguty is a branch of the Evangelical Augsburg parish in Ostoja. Łęgucki Młyn. It is a colony of the village of Łęguty, located at the Pasłęk River and at Łęgucki and Isong lakes. The great location in the protected landscape area of the Taborski forests in the Natura 2000 bird and habitat area, the Pasłęk valley and river, makes it very attractive. It is partially located in a nature reserve, a beaver refuge on the Pasłęk River. The centre is a complex of buildings with great tourist and recreational potential. 3 villas, a summer house, 2 wooden farmhouses, and a guardhouse with a bar and an office. The entire property is equipped with technical infrastructure. There are 2 walking platforms at the lakeshore, and there is also a tennis court and shelters with a fireplace, and a place for a bonfire. Over the years, the centre in Łęgucki Młyn has been a refuge for relaxation and regeneration of vitality for many people. Among them were the dignitaries of the Polish People's Republic, headed by Władysław Gomułka. Apparently, Prime Minister Piotr Jaroszewicz also came to the area for hunting, and Nikita Khrushchev gave one of the Serbian pine houses to Władysław Gomułka here. For years, the centre belonged to the Olsztyn district. It housed the District Educational Centre, the seat of the local action group South Warmia, a small hydroelectric power plant, and what is more, cyclical rallies of automotive fans, including the Warmian VW Beetle Rally and the FSO Car Rally took place here. Currently, the Olsztyn district plans to sell the facility for tourist and recreational purposes. Beaver Refuge Reserve on the Pasłęk River. In Poland, despite the fact that beavers were under the care of the rulers from the 10th century, they were practically exterminated until the beginning of the 20th century. After World War II, only a few positions of beavers in northeastern Poland remained within the present borders of our country. Until the end of the 1960s, the number of beavers was low, around several hundred. As a result of numerous reintroductions of beavers started in the 1970s, the population of these animals began to increase quite quickly. Currently, beavers are found practically all over the country, and most frequently they inhabit the northeastern part of Poland. In 2000, the number of beavers in our country was estimated at about 18,000 in total. Ottokar Rudke contributed significantly to the increase in the population of beavers in northeastern Poland, making all possible efforts to protect the largest rodent in Eurasia. Its weight can reach even 30 kilograms. It is Ottokar that we have to thank for the creation of a reserve of these animals on the Pasłęk River in 1947. The plan with the boundaries of the planned reserve included the Bobrów and Żelowice forest districts together with Żelazny Lake and the Nowy Młyn enclave. On the other hand, in accordance with the Ordinance No. 17 of the Minister of Forestry and Wood Industry of January the 23rd, 1958, the area along the Pasłęk River, located in Łukta and Biesel communities in the Ostoja district and in Wolowno and Gietrzwałd communities in the Olsztyn district, was recognized as a nature reserve called Kudypy Beaver Refuge. Ottokar Rudke watched with delight the everyday life of beaver families. In his report from March the 19th, 1946, he wrote, "This beautiful former inhabitant of our country, who lives here in natural conditions, is the pride of the forest district and is taken care of by the local staff in a way that they can afford. In Otto Rutger's private notes, there is the following entry that proves that the forest manager's efforts to protect beavers. Among the most valuable fur animals, we have a legendary beaver in the Kudupi State Forest District. They are not beavers kept in cages or fences, but beavers living freely in a wild and natural state in swamps, rivers and lakes. In 1927, a couple of beavers, kept in a certain estate, escaped and wandered along the rivers, and they chose a beautiful wild neighbourhood on the banks of the Pasłęk River. The swamps and riverbanks, covered with clusters of bushes and deciduous trees, as well as diverse flora, provided excellent food for these large rodents and gave them the possibility to reproduce. Today, the number of beavers in a given area is estimated at around 40. They adapted their lives to the local conditions, and only a few built houses on the surface of the water. They build their basic houses in the ground under the high banks of the river. It can be assumed that soon beavers will spread to all areas convenient for them, because several families in further areas are already known. In earlier times, beavers in Missouri were not rare, but human greed exterminated them completely because the last beaver was killed in 1844. Now, after 100 years, we have beavers again, and thanks to strict protection and the creation of a reserve, they will be able to reproduce in peace. And when they reach such a state as hares, hunters will also have the right to hunt them.